Let's talk about school. For most of us, it's a huge part of our lives. But we're going to go a little deeper today, beyond the books and the football games, to look at a really tough subject, the surprising and sometimes dark connection between school and juvenile delinquency.
So, let's just jump right in with a provocative question. What if, for a lot of kids, the single biggest influence on their future isn't what happens at home, but what happens in the hallways and classrooms of their school? It's a pretty powerful thought, right? And it totally changes how we look at childhood development.
You know, we've always been told that school is the great equalizer. It's where you're supposed to learn how to be a good citizen, and it's seen as the one true path to getting a good job and being successful. I mean, in today's world, a solid education is everything.
And that's really the heart of the issue. For millions of kids, school is absolutely that launchpad. But for a whole lot of others, it's the opposite. It's where things start to go wrong. It becomes a place of frustration and failure that can actually push them away from a good life and maybe toward a life of crime.
So, how's the U.S. school system really doing on a global scale? Well, the data paints a bit of a worrying picture. Take the piece of math tests for 15-year-olds. In China, a whopping 55% of students were top performers, and in the United States, that number was only 9%. That put the U.S. way down at 27th out of 62 countries. Now, this isn't just about bragging rights. It points to a system where a lot of students feel like they're being left behind, creating this breeding ground for frustration and behavioral problems.
And that feeling of being left behind, it feeds directly into what a lot of experts call the school-to-delinquency pipeline. In fact, study after study has shown that doing poorly in school is a huge predictor of whether a kid will get into trouble, even more so than their family's income, their race, or even who their friends are.
So this brings up that classic chicken or egg question, right? Do kids who are already getting into trouble just naturally fail in school? Or does the experience of failing at school actually push them into delinquency? You've got a few theories. Maybe failure leads to low self-esteem, which leads to crime. Or maybe another factor altogether, like poverty, causes both. Honestly, it's probably a messy combination of all of these things.
Okay, so what is it about the school system itself that might be setting kids up to fail? Well, one really big factor is a practice called tracking. You've probably seen this. It's when schools split students up into different groups based on their perceived ability. You know, the advanced kids, the average kids, and the remedial kids. And here's the real danger with tracking. It can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Think about it. When you put a kid in a lower track, you're basically telling them, this is what we think you're capable of. And over time, that kid starts to believe it. Their own expectations drop, their behavior changes to match, and they get locked in this cycle of just not achieving.
Now let's talk about another huge piece of this puzzle, discipline. And this number, well, it's pretty shocking. According to a giant survey by the U.S. Department of Education, Black students are 3.5 times more likely to be suspended or expelled than white students.
And this is way bigger than just getting in trouble. This gap in how discipline is handed out is a major engine of the school-to-jail link. When kids get kicked out of the classroom through suspension or expulsion, their chances of dropping out and eventually ending up in the justice system just skyrocket.
Okay, so we've talked about academic failure, but there's a whole other side to this, the actual crimes that happen inside the school. This isn't just about kids failing classes, it's about kids becoming victims at school.
And the numbers on this are kind of nuts. Even though teenagers are only in school for about a quarter of their time, a huge percentage of the crimes against them happen right there. We're talking 40% of robberies and 36% of physical attacks. School has become a real hotspot for crime.
But here's something that might actually surprise you. Despite all the scary headlines we see, the overall crime rate in schools has actually gone down. A lot. This chart shows a pretty steady and significant drop over almost 20 years. So, while it's still a serious problem, the trend, believe it or not, is moving in the right direction.
All right, let's zero in on one of the most common forms of violence at school, bullying. For so long, people just wrote it off as, oh, kids will be kids. But we now know it is a serious problem with really damaging long-term effects.
Yeah, the way we see bullying has done a complete 180. The old boys will be boys excuse, it's gone. Now we see bullying for what it is, a major risk factor for violence, a cause of serious psychological harm for victims, and for the bully themselves, a pretty strong sign they might be headed for trouble down the road.
And just how big is this problem? Well, every year, about 7 million students in the U.S. say they've been bullied, either in person or online. 7 million.
That's more than 1 out of every 4 students. It's not just a problem, it's an epidemic.
But here's the good news. This isn't some impossible problem to solve. We actually know what works. A program called the Always program, started in Norway, has shown that if you attack the problem from all sides, with school-wide training, clear rules, more teachers watching the halls, and direct interventions, you can cut bullying rates in half.
So what are schools actually doing to deal with all this? Well, the approaches usually fall into one of two camps. You can either turn your school into a fortress, or you can try to build a stronger community.
The fortress approach is the one we see a lot. It means strict, zero-tolerance rules for everything. It means police officers or school resource officers patrolling the halls. It means metal detectors, security cameras, and searching lockers. The whole idea is to control the environment and scare kids straight.
But here's the pushback. Critics say there's not a lot of proof that this zero-tolerance stuff even works. And worse, these policies often hit minority students the hardest. So instead of solving problems, you might just be creating more fear and division and pushing more kids out of the system.
And all of this huge push for security, has kicked off a massive legal battle that's still raging today. It's a fundamental conflict between the rights of a student and the power of a school.
This fight has gone all the way to the Supreme Court again and again. You have landmark cases like Tinker, which famously said students don't shed their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse door. But then you have cases like TLO, which gave schools more power to search students. The courts are constantly trying to walk this tightrope between a student's freedom and a school's need for safety, and the line is always moving.
Which brings us to the one question that hangs over all of this. We all want schools to be safe places where kids can learn. Of course we do. But to get that safety, how much freedom are we willing to ask our kids to give up when they walk through those doors? It's a tough question, and there's no easy answer.